it's just chaos. We had 4 people shot in the thigh, 1 shot in the chest, 1 shot in the back. Dude, we pull up and we're just swarmed. Man, as soon as I hit, it just crunch. I knew it. I could feel it. And I was like, oh my gosh. If I could have gotten that surgery the next day, it'd just helped me out a lot better the day after.
Your chances, you have a fighting chance at least at that point.
And you know, that's why we started this thing. If we can make a difference and first responders don't have to go through this, because it's not like I'm an isolated story here.
Yeah, there's multiples out there.
And if something like this happens, it's going to be the same type scenario. And she said, are you mentally prepared to not go back to doing what you were doing?
All right, we are back. Episode 3, The Forgotten Firefighter Show. We've got Stephen Hargrove back. We want to talk about everything, man. Your life, where you've been, firefighting stories, just all of it, like injury stuff. Really dive into who you are.
All right, let's go.
What makes you that? So, yeah. So we know the biker bar stories. Let's go like before that, like, like where you're from, you know.
All right. I was born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
I always lived on like the south side of Fort Worth, not far from here, actually. Actually, like there's a middle school like a mile over this way.
Yeah.
I went to middle school there, H.F. Stevens.
Nice.
Anyways, yeah, born and raised in Fort Worth. Fort Worth guy. I played high school football.
Okay.
Come from a good, great parents, great family, loving family. I don't know. That's my story.
Pretty simple.
Pretty simple. Yeah, man. Pretty simple.
But like one of the things that's interesting, I think about you is you speak pretty fluent Spanish. So where did that come from? Like, how is that?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm conversational. That's how I would put it. When I went to a small private school, little Christian private school in South Fort Worth. And I went there from kindergarten to 6th grade. And when I was in 5th grade, we had a teacher there, and she was actually the 3rd grade teacher, but she came into our classroom and she said, I'll never forget it because it just stands out to me. She said, I'm going to teach y'all Spanish. She said these words. She was like, y'all may not understand this now, but the dynamics in Texas and the United States are changing. And when y'all grow up, it's going to be very important that you're bilingual, that you know Spanish. It'll just help you in life. And so she came in for I think it was either once or twice a week for the duration of that year, and we had Spanish class. So that was my base. And then I've always done landscaping since I was like 12 years old. And then when I got a little older, like 18, 19, I started working with guys from Mexico, Central America. And so I took that and I would just used it. We had to be able to communicate to work.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And then I was also a waiter, bartender, and in the back of the house, which the back of the house is in the back where the cooks are and the dishwashers and all that. A lot of them are only Spanish speakers. So I picked up a little more then. And then when I got on the ambulance for the fire department.
Right.
So all this medical stuff was new to me, all these medical terms. When you go to EMT and paramedic, it's like learning a new language, literally. And so there was a Mexican-born gentleman who was on our department. And I went to him one day and I was like, hey, I don't know a lot of these medical terms. And really just in a conversation that we had for like an hour or two, I started that. I got some of the medical terms in Spanish and just built off that.
Right.
So just through all those aspects, I'm conversational in Spanish.
Yeah, you just kept building on it.
I just kept building on it.
Yeah.
I think most people are afraid to use it.
Yeah.
It's just like they're like, there's a hesitancy there.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to sound stupid or whatever. It's just, just go for it.
Yeah.
Just jump in there, jump in the deep end.
Yeah. People might feel like they're going to mess up or something. So,
yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, I enjoy that because like the first time I heard you speak Spanish on the phone, I was like, what?
Yeah. Because you're always there talking to the guys that I got working with. Yeah.
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 They Lyden called you the what did you say the Spanish Mr. Clean?
Bollically challenged, man. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
All right. So then you went through like you worked at that bar.
Yeah.
How old were you? You said 26.
I worked there when I was like 25, 26 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you moved. That's when you got into that situation where you saw a fire, something in Fort Worth, and that's what got you spurred on to
it was just kind of like that light bulb. You hear the term going nowhere fast.
Yeah.
That's kind of I was just stuck. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I saw those guys bury up, and it was like that light bulb went off. And then I met my now wife, and I got a job at a plumbing supply company, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was working full time and going to night school.
Okay.
And I took all that very seriously. The EMT, paramedic, and the fire academy. I did very well in those things. And like me in school, like I call it bookish. I read a lot, right?
Okay.
But school for me, just a lot of the subjects weren't interesting.
Yeah.
But when I got into something I liked, I took it seriously and I did very well. So the schooling part for me I liked it.
Yeah.
It was all new. It was all new to me, especially the medical stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
That's how I feel with cars. Like school stuff, I don't know. I did okay. But like if it had to do with something with cars or something moving,
yeah,
I excelled at that. And then so that's what kind of kept me going. But I feel the same way. I can understand that. Where you get into something you actually enjoy, actually has a purpose, and keeps pushing you to do better at it. So, okay, so moving on from that, then you go, that job, you got your now wife. Did you get married then? Like, how did that work out?
Yeah, so that was 2000. When did I start all that? 5, 4. Yeah, so at the end of in paramedic school, I was done with paramedic school, which was for me was 15 months long, and at the end of that we got married, and that was in fall of 2007. And then I actually worked for a small department for a very short time before getting hired in Dallas, and I knew it was going to be a temporary thing.
Right.
It was a military contractor over in Grand Prairie, on the Grand Prairie Dallas border. And basically they were building C-130. It was all military stuff.
Yeah.
C-130 cargos, the big cargo, jumbo jets basically for the military where they haul tanks in and all that. Yeah. They were building those. They were building the Black Hawk helicopters and the bomber drones. Well, they had millions of dollars worth of equipment there, and they had a little fire brigade there. And basically, we did a whole lot of nothing. And I was there for about a year, a little less than that, before I got on with Dallas.
Okay. And so the C-130 thing is like, I know that pretty well. So my wife works for the Air Force, and she's on like contractor stuff. So she does contracts through Tinker in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. And one of the things she was on was the engine program for the C-130. So that's interesting.
Those engines are gigantic.
Huge.
It's like the size of this.
Yeah. Yeah. They're huge. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that whole plane's huge. Okay. That's interesting. So you keep moving along, and then you get into Dallas finally. Like you go through that process.
Yep.
Okay.
And so that's where I wanted to be, because like I said, I was like at this place I'm glad that I got that little job there, because it was kind of like it was a step for me to continue on. I was some experience, whatever. And we did a whole lot of nothing. Like I said, a lot of what we did was, we were there to put out fires if they happened around that high value, equipment, aircraft.
Right.
But a lot of what we did was like somebody working on it would have a diabetic emergency or a seizure or something like that.
Yeah.
And that would happen about once a month.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to get in on the action. And I thought that the best chance for me to do that was in Dallas. And Dallas was the first place I applied to.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've got, you got a big city, there's going to be something going on.
100%.
Yeah. So you get on to Dallas, and then, so you, Leiden, and Josh, all rookies together.
All rookies together.
Yeah. And then, so where's that dynamic like? What station did you go to? Where, like, they went to different, everybody goes somewhere different? How did that work?
Somewhere different.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, Josh, I call him Hogan. Some people call him Josh, but it's same.
Yeah. Same guy.
Hogan and myself, we were in 6th District on C shift. We were swing rookies, and that's Oak Cliff.
Yeah.
We were in Oak Cliff. That was, man, it was eye-opening to me, so to speak. It was like getting thrown in the fire, you know? I mean, like my first day in the field, I mean, we had a CPR that was pretty, like, just, it was a lot.
Yeah.
Not all, some CPRs, you know, it's like a nursing home and you go in there and it's just not, it's kind of quiet.
Right.
It was a chaotic scene.
Yeah.
CPR. We had a guy that was shot and killed. And then that night we had a big O fire. And a little backstory on this.
Okay.
So we get sent out of the academy that day. And it was the day after Christmas was our first day in the field. So I had cracked the side of my helmet, right, in academy.
Okay.
And they like lined us all up before we got sent out. And they check all our gear to make sure we're good before we go out in the field. Because we've been training in it, you know, whatever. They do like a final check off.
Yeah.
And they were like, Hargrove, go get your helmet checked or go get your helmet replaced. We call it clothing and supply. That's where you swap out bad gear or whatever.
Right.
So I go to clothing and supply, and I had a cool helmet in academy, like what you see guys and gals wearing, you know, like whatever on the TV or normal pictures.
Right.
Well, they were out of them because all the rookies had just gone through and gotten all the helmets. So they had these old school, they called them turtle shells. And I mean, they looked, I don't know, they looked European. Nothing bad on the Europeans, but it was very different looking.
Yeah.
And they hand me this helmet, and I like looked at it like, man, this is it. And I didn't think nothing about it. Well, see, those helmets have ear flaps that come down. There's flaps that come down that protect your ears.
Right.
Well, the helmet they gave me did not have ear flaps on it.
No.
So we pull up, and that's another thing. Man, on the way to this call, because you're in rookie school and you don't realize how aggressive it's going to get once you're out in the field. Mm-hmm. And when a fire comes in, we call it a box. Over the loudspeakers, it says, let's roll them. And then everybody just gets up and runs to the engine and truck. Well, that was the first time I'd heard, let's roll them. Let's roll them. Structure fire reported. Yeah. Engine 23, engine 33, engine 25, truck. You know, it was just starts.
Yeah, chaos.
And we get in the back of that engine, and I mean, this dude is taking off. I mean, you're not prepared for that. Yeah. I mean, I'm getting thrown all over the back of this thing. Like, oh, they didn't say it was going to be like this.
Yeah.
And then I remember, never forget, the lieutenant, he turns around, he goes, we got one. We got multiple calls on this. When you see multiple calls on the screen, that means, it's a pretty good chance you got one.
It's happening.
We pull up, and it's an abandoned apartment, and fire is coming out the front of the first and second floor, just a bunch of it.
Yeah.
And so circling back to my helmet, I didn't have those ear flaps on there. I didn't know. Dude, we get in there, and I am burning.
Yeah.
My ears are cooking.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I was like, we got in there, and anyways, I burned my ears. It was I don't want to curse on this. It was a bad show.
Yeah.
It did not get, so, man, that was my first day, I had all that happen, and I remember just like driving home. Because, we didn't sleep that much,
Yeah.
I just remember driving home and be like, man, is it going to be like this all the time? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, what I get into.
Yeah, what I get into here.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, but it was just like, it was a lot.
No, yeah, it's a ton.
Yeah.
First day.
Yeah, first day. I got baptized by fire, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Got burned on my first day. Had faulty equipment and looked like an idiot.
No ear flaps.
No
wrong
ear
helmet.
flap. Yeah, wrong. Yeah, just all wrong.
Yeah.
But I turned it around after that.
Yeah. So did they give you a new helmet like pretty quick? How did that work out?
Oh, they took that helmet away from me. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't have this one anymore.
No. I think a lot of people probably got chewed out for allowing me in the field with that, and they shouldn't have been. It was just, things got lost in translation.
Yeah. He's kind of throwing out there.
Yeah.
That's day one. Like, that's pretty intense.
That was day one, man.
Yeah.
Day one.
So if after day one, did it stay up? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had like 4 fires in my first 2 weeks. And they got better after that for me.
Yeah.
When I had the right equipment on, it got better.
When your ears aren't getting burned off.
Yeah. And that was at Station 23. And I wasn't there for long. Maybe like a month. Now, Hogan and Leiden both went back to that station as firefighters. And then Hogan is a driver. And that's a hot house, that one they were at.
Yeah.
And then, of course, then you're a swing rookie. You're going around the district. You're going to different stations. You're going to a different place all the time, right? And then we were fast trackers, and so like Hogan and I were already paramedics. I was already a paramedic, and so like the first year, like every 3 months, they would switch us around to another station, and then I got put up in North Dallas for my first assignment. That was pretty slow, or as far as fires go, it was pretty busy as far as EMS calls.
Yeah.
And then I got back to Oak Cliff on the west side of Oak Cliff, Station 52. I was there for 2.5 years and had a lot of fun there. That was not a very hot place historically, but we went through a time where there was 52s in West Oak Cliff. There's a little town called Cockrell Hill.
Okay.
And Cockrell Hill is a volunteer fire department. But we would come in with mutual aid and help them out.
Yeah.
Well, they had an arsonist running around there.
Oh, no.
And so, there was a streak there where we were getting fires
all the time.
all the time in Cockrell Hill. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I went to Station 15 in Oak Cliff, and that was a lot of fun. I was there at that point, I was there with who I consider still to this day, like some of my lifelong friends now.
Yeah.
And so we've all just kind of stayed in contact with each other. Hogan, of course, we were in all rookie school together.
Yeah.
But a lot of those friendships, they still, until I was, so on August 23rd, 23, that's when I hurt myself. But up until that point, I kind of worked the same groups.
Yeah.
We'd all work together.
Yeah. You find a way to get in the same place.
Yep.
Yeah. So before we go into your like actual injury story,
Yeah.
is there anything like stands out, like fire related, like call related, something that just is in your memory, like a story that you can tell? Is anything there that you want to talk about, like before we keep going?
Man, there's so many stories.
Yeah.
Well, there was getting burned on the first day.
Yeah. First day, day one.
Yeah. And then all the, as far as fire calls go, as when I went up to North Dallas, it's called Station 57. I promoted a driver, and then I followed a guy who I was working with in Oak Cliff, and he made lieutenant and went to North Dallas. It's called Station 57, far northeast Dallas.
Okay.
And he said, I want you to come up here with me because I promoted a driver because when you promote, there's a big list that comes out and you can bid on all these new driver assignments.
Okay.
And I was kind of hesitant, to be honest with you, because it was, I don't know, historically, more fires were fought in South Dallas than in North Dallas. Now you have bigger fires up in North Dallas. So I made the move. I followed him basically, and several of us did. And within my first 2 weeks up there, once again, we had all these gigantic fires because we were fighting like single-story homes, smaller house fires in Oak Cliff.
In the south,
that's
south
a bulk.
side.
That's a bulk of it. I mean, you get in there and you bury up, and it's hot, and you just grab that hot horseshoe and hang on, until it's out. But up there, I don't know, my perspective got bigger. It was just bigger fires. I mean, you pull up and you've got an attic going over multiple units, and people are screaming, "My baby's in there, my kid's in there," all that kind of stuff.
Larger structures.
And there's a lot of apartments up there. So multi-residentials. So there's a lot of, when you got a fire in a multi-residential, it's like there's a lot of potential for a lot of people to die.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always that potential when it's a house anyways, right?
Yeah.
But in the multi-residentials, they can run on you, and a lot of people get trapped, burned, die of smoke inhalation. So my perspective, I went from, it was just a progression from me from looking at, I don't know, you start studying and you start learning, you're having reps, and you just get more of a bird's eye view. So as a lieutenant going up to those bigger structures, it helped me out. Fought a lot of good apartment fires up there. In fact, I would say the thing that I'm most proud of anything in my career as far as firefighting goes is that the group that I was with at 57's on C shift, I was there for 10 years. And our group in that 10 years, when our engine and our truck answered together, we never had what they call a second alarm fire.
Okay.
Now, we had several times where these chiefs would put a second alarm on it, but by the time they'd got there, we'd put it out.
Yeah, you got to handle them.
100%.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I'm just more proud of that than anything.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty special. I mean,
yeah. Crazy stories. I'll tell you, a lot of your craziest stories are going to be on EMS calls, believe it or not, because you're by yourself.
Yeah.
So here's one. So nowadays, if we have a shooting, a stabbing, an aggravated assault, anything like that, we wait until the police get there. And then they clear it, and then we go in and handle the emergency.
Yeah.
Well, so when did the Mavericks win the championship?
Oh, shoot.
2010, 11?
Yeah, I was in that era, like 10, somewhere in there.
Well, back then it wasn't. I mean, if shooting, whatever, we were the first ones there, and we would pull up to chaos, you know? So, I'm going to set the background for this story.
Okay.
There was a apartment complex at 52s where I talked about the first place that I was assigned to permanently. And in this apartment complex, there were these two guys that had been getting into it verbally.
Yeah.
And they made it known to everyone. And why they set this date, I don't know. At the end of the championship game, the Mavericks championship game, we are going to fight it out. Okay. I'm dead serious. And so like 1,000 people show up to watch this fight.
Oh, okay. It's like they broadcast.
No, yeah, dude. Yeah. I mean, it was, I don't know if they were on MySpace back then. Facebook was just coming out. So, but anyways, yeah, people knew about it. People showed up. And I'll never forget, we're at the station. We got to watch that fourth quarter. Mavericks won. We're all excited. As soon as that game's over with, we hear gunshot wound, and it gives out the address. And me and my partner were by ourselves. We go in, and dude, and it's just chaos. We had 4 people shot in the thigh, 1 shot in the chest, 1 shot in the back. Dude, we pull up and we're just swarmed.
Yeah.
And like people are screaming, people are bleeding. It was nuts. I'll never forget this one lady. She pulls up and she's right at my window. She's like, my baby's been shot. My baby's been shot. And I got all these people tugging on me trying to get the people shot. And I was like, well, I got to get to this baby. Yeah. Dude, I pull in. So we pull up and I was like, where at? And she was like, you're in that apartment building right there. So I make my way through the crowd slowly, get as close as I can there, get out. Well, her baby is her boyfriend.
Oh.
But he was shot in the chest. Another guy was shot in the back. I mean, it's just pandemonium.
Yeah.
The cops finally get there. I mean, and there's fights breaking out on this thing, just stuff like that.
Tons of people there.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
And what did y'all do? Like,
we loaded up the 2 most serious guys and took off.
Okay. Got out of there.
Yeah, got out of Dodge, man. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. That's like, I can't even imagine. It'd be scary. That many people and it's just you two? It's just you and your partner and that's it?
It's just us two.
Yeah.
And then finally the police show up there. And of course we call it in. Hey, we got multiple people shot. We need X many ambulances, like a EMS supervisor, some engines for manpower, all that kind of stuff. All that comes too, but not after you get there and see what's what.
Yeah, figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Boy. So that's at 52. You said 52?
Yeah.
Okay. And what station were you at when you got into your injury happened?
That was 57s.
57s.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 2008, 2016, 15, 2014.
Okay.
I was in Oak Cliff at Station 15. I made driver, and then I went up to far northeast Dallas to Station 57. And I was at Station 57 as a driver, a lieutenant, and a captain. I just stayed at the same place on the same shift, which is rare nowadays. So I got to work with the same group of people that entire time.
Yeah.
Which is it's like I said, it's rare nowadays. So that was good for me. We had had an awesome crew. In fact, so Hogan came over and was my lieutenant when I got hurt. We've been working together for a couple of years at that point.
Okay.
We joined up again.
Yeah.
And man, it was awesome. I had one of my best friends as my lieutenant, and we were doing a bang up job together.
Yeah.
Creating our little station empire.
Yeah.
And I got hurt.
Yeah.
And it kind of got yanked away from me, so to speak.
Yeah. So you had this whole deal set up like how you wanted it. The guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I was on the truck as a captain, right? But like the engine driver, J.R. Santos, J.R. and I had worked together since 15s. I'd worked with him for, at that point, 13 years, 12, 13 years. Yeah. And another guy, Matt Pena, who's now the paramedic driver at 57s. He had been a rookie, a swing rookie with us at 52s. So I'd worked around him for the same amount of time, if not a little bit longer. Josh and I had been friends since rookie school together. The guys that I had on the truck with me, we were all within a year of each other in age.
Okay.
And in my mind, I had the driver and the firefighter. Jason Grimminger was the driver, and Daniel Coleman was the firefighter in the back. And we're all like within a year of each other of age. And I was like, oh, we're just going to retire together out of this hole.
Yeah.
And as fate would have it, and wasn't in the cards, but yeah.
Yeah. Didn't work out that way.
No.
So the day you get injured.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. Like go through like what was going on that day, the call, like much detail as you can remember, just to give that description and put it out there, like paint a picture of what exactly was going on, what happened, and kind of go through it the best you can.
All right. So on that day, it was, like I said, it was August 23rd, 23. And if it wasn't the hottest day of the year, it was, knocking on its door. It was hot, one of the hottest days. I think it was 109 degrees when it came in. It was about 3:30 when that fire came in.
It's August in Texas.
It's August in Texas. Yeah. Exactly. It don't mess around.
Yep.
And so a fire had come in, and it was not in our first up, which when I say in our first up, we weren't going to be the first in truck. We weren't going to be the first in engine, but we weren't going to be the first to arrive on scene. We were going to be like we were going to be the second truck to arrive and probably like the third engine to arrive or something like that. So we're en route. Companies are already there. When we pulled up, it was a 3-story apartment building, and there was smoke coming out of I could see it was in the attic, and it was white smoke. So what that told me was there was a cross lay going through the front door of this apartment, this one single apartment.
Okay.
And I thought, so normally when things are burning, it's like a black smoke or a brown smoke. And if it's white, it means they got water on it and it's starting to go out. It either means that or it's deep seated, like it's in the walls and that color's been filtered out to white.
I see. Okay.
So, yeah. And I don't want to go too far in the woods on that. I don't want to nerd out too much on the fire side of it. But we pulled up and I thought they either got water on this thing or it's deep seated. Well, we get in there and no, there was no fire up there. It was deep seated. And so I needed to get up there and find out with my thermal camera, which is a heat, like you can see your heat and what's the flow paths of heat with that camera. I needed to get up there and see where the heat source was so we could get in the right wall and tear it out and mitigate this thing.
Yeah.
And so I got up in the attic and I found out where it was. I radioed to the chief. I said, "Hey, chief, this thing ain't up here." I said, "It's either on the first or second story in this wall." Now, I didn't want to tell the other companies where it was because I wanted to tell my guys where it was so we could get the glory of finding this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in my mind, I was like, oh, we're about to come down. I'm about to get my 2 guys that are with me on the truck, the 2 guys whose names I just mentioned. Yeah. I said, I'm going to show them right where it's at. And we'll make quick work of this and we'll be gone.
Yeah.
It's hot. So I'm making my way across and I started to make my way down and I had my hand on one of because it was a cathedral ceiling, which a cathedral ceiling, it's not structural. So those joists are allowed to be wider than if it was holding weight, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
If it was supporting weight of that structure, and it wasn't. So they were wider. So I put my hand on one to start to make my way down, and I was starting to reach for that other one, and it was hot, I guess. And I was already, we hadn't been there that long, but I'd gotten up in there and I was just a little winded. It was hot.
Yeah. Wondering all the gear and
I just missed with that hand. And when I did, I fell through and I almost caught myself. I jerked his hand a little bit, but I came down and they had already pulled all that sealing and it was on the floor.
Okay.
And so it was uneven.
Yeah.
And man, as soon as I hit, it just crunch. I knew it. I could feel it. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like there's a term called crepitus that we learned in paramedic school. It's like the sound bone makes when it's.
Yeah. Real nice.
Well, I know what that is now.
Yeah.
I experienced it firsthand. So at that point, I was like, oh my gosh. So I hopped out the front of that door. I took my pack off. I took my coat off because I was just trying to lighten my load.
Yeah. And
I hopped my way down the stairs and I sat on the curb right next to my battalion chief. And I sat down and I said, "Chief, you need to get me an ambulance. I just broke my leg." And I said it kind of like I just said it.
Yeah.
Not real dramatic.
Real nonchalant.
Yeah. And in fact, after the fact, he was like, I didn't think you'd hurt yourself that bad just because how you were acting. I was like, no, I was hurting, Jack.
Yeah.
So anyways, they took me to Parkland. I didn't say that last episode, but whatever. We can say that.
Yeah.
The major trauma center in Dallas.
Yeah.
They took me to Parkland. Parkland's like, yeah, your leg's broke. There was a resident there that day. All the orthos were gone that day. By this time, it was like 4:30, something like that. 5 maybe. And they were all gone. They were done with their surgeries for the day.
Yeah.
So the resident was just there. And she wasn't real comfortable with what was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, hey, you're coming back to the surgery center first thing tomorrow. And I was like, awesome. So they let me go. And I called our workers' comp people and I said, hey, they got me. I'm going to the surgery center tomorrow. They got surgery. I'm going to have surgery tomorrow. I said, well, Steve, you can't go there. They're not in network. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what that means really, at that point.
Yeah.
And it took them 3 weeks to get to have the surgeon that was in network, who's a great guy. Yeah. So there was that 3-week delay. I was in bed. My foot was just because, like say you're laying in bed like that, right?
Right.
And that's how your feet should be. Well, my left was just forward and I couldn't even move it back. Just I had that broken leg and all those ligaments and tendons were completely blown out. So I'm laying in bed for 3 weeks. Then I had the surgery. Of course, that's another 2 weeks of bed rest. And then after 5 weeks in bed, that's when I developed the deep vein thrombosis, a blood clot.
Okay.
Bad in my leg. So, yeah.
But you're okay. So I guess
I know that's a lot there.
What I'm trying to understand is we got a broken leg.
Got a broken leg.
Got all this stuff happening.
Yep.
Foot's just hanging there.
Foot's just hanging
there. Nothing? Like, do they give you,
mm-hmm.
I mean, you had.
Yeah, I'm not trying to,
But you had something, but like you didn't.
I had a boot that they would put me in. But it was, man, my leg was so dang swollen. And it was a walking boot.
Right. Okay.
It was so swollen. And I would actually sleep with it off because it was cramping up on me so bad.
Just tight. Yeah.
Just crazy. Even the surgeon was like, he's like, man, I think you have a blood clot. That's the other thing. 2 weeks post injury, it was swelling up so bad. He was like, hey, let's check for a blood clot. And I was clear at that point.
Right.
So I know 2 weeks post injury that I was good. It was somewhere in the 3 weeks afterwards where it developed.
Yeah. So it was down the road.
Yeah.
They checked it.
Those cramps got painful, Jack.
Well, you could have had surgery the next day.
Yes. If I'd have had private insurance, I'd have had surgery the next day.
Yeah. Just, okay. So I guess from the outside looking at it, and probably anybody looking at this. So you're injured, clearly on a work-related call.
Yeah.
In the field. You go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And can't get treated at that hospital with your foot hanging there.
You can get treated at that hospital, but they'd have had to kept me overnight. If they'd have kept me overnight, once you cross that threshold, once you leave, you're under a different system because they have to treat you emergency wise.
Yeah.
With whatever they're going to call. When you're in that hospital, when you're in that ER, whatever they do, they're going to have to cover it.
Yeah.
Okay. They're going to have to cover it right then and there for the duration of that visit to that hospital.
Yeah.
Be that several hours like I was in there the first time, or we've had members that go months in a hospital, and that's actually to their benefit. As long as they keep you there, they can't delay or deny anything.
Yeah. You're getting help.
But you got to stay there. Once you leave, you're in the labyrinth of incompetence that is work comp.
Yeah. Well, and you didn't know. Like,
Had no idea.
You didn't know.
No,
okay,
had
come back tomorrow. Sweet. You know what I mean? At least you got an answer, something to move forward on.
Yeah.
And then it turns out, no. Okay, so we go through that. You're through that part. 2 weeks in, you're clear. Like you don't have a
and that's part of my
check for the blood clot deal.
That's part of my whole argument. It's like if I had been able to have that surgery that next morning, and then had the 2 weeks of bed rest, and then started doing my PT and been up and moving around, I just don't think that this would have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I have pretty good proof that 2 weeks post-injury, I did not have a blood clot.
Yeah, you were good.
Yeah.
Well, not good, but you didn't have that problem.
Yeah. And I mean, full stop, full disclosure. One of the things that has really, it was to my detriment was that, and I had no way of knowing this, was that I actually have 3 clotting disorders. One's called factor V Leiden, and I have both variants of MTHFR. And what that means is this. I'm more prone to clots, right? But the main thing is that if I do get a clot and I don't get into a vascular surgeon pretty quick, it ain't going away with blood thinners. And I had no way of knowing that.
Yeah.
And by the time I learned this, and by the time I got to the vascular surgeon, those windows were gone because of the delays. So there are other contributing factors to this, or there's other aspects to my injury.
Yeah, but it's the same thing still existed. Like if you could have gotten treated,
it was the downtime. Like my surgeon says that's what did this to you, buddy.
Yeah, it's
the fact that you were in bed for 5 weeks.
Yeah,
because this didn't develop for 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's crazy. So and I mean, you're married.
I am.
Yeah, you've got kids. One daughter.
Yeah.
Like you're sitting at home. How does that go? Like it's hard on the family.
It was. I mean, it's that was a rough time.
Yeah.
Just because, especially, so I'll never forget. So I got out of surgery, right? That 3 weeks afterwards, I had the surgery. And I'll never forget. I came out of the ether, so to speak, out of the anesthesia because you're out. I remember coming out and I had such relief in my leg. I mean, it was the first thing I noticed. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, my leg didn't hurt anymore. I was in some pain for those 3 weeks. I mean, honestly, I was.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing I noticed. I was like, oh man, my leg doesn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
My ankle isn't just killing me. And then, but what I did notice was I was like, man, my shoulder is killing me now.
Okay.
I retore my rotator cuff.
Oh no.
So that's another part of this whole thing. I tore my rotator cuff. Here's a story for you. It was Christmas morning, 2011. I told you about the arsonist that we had running around in that little town called Cockrell Hill that we gave mutual aid to.
Yeah.
It was at shift change time. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. The fire comes in. We had worked Christmas Eve. Well, at 6 o'clock, that's when at about the time that you start getting your relief. That oncoming shift, your gear's off, their gear's on.
They're coming in.
Well, it comes on. That it comes through, and a lot of times if it comes in at shift change, guys will hop on, or it's a mixed crew of the preceding shift and the oncoming shift. Anyways, dude, I hopped on. We had a fire, and there was one going really well. And this fire was, it was getting it. And it had caught the houses on both sides. And those older houses over there, like in Oak Cliff and Cockrell Hill, they have what they call shiplap ceiling. Bless you.
Sorry, my bad.
These fall allergies, man.
That's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening.
So it's shiplap. ceilings. Like in here, you have these tiles, and these are really easy to take out. But that shiplap, I mean, it's wood.
Yeah.
And it's grooved together.
Yeah.
And you've really got to get some oomph. In fact, not everybody can tear the shiplap ceilings out. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So the house that was fully involved, they were just on the outside surrounding and drowning that thing. And we're trying to save these other 2 houses. Well, I got in there with that shiplap pole, and I tear out that shiplap. And when I did, I tore my shoulder. And so, yeah. And up until that point, when I was younger, I was pretty strong. I mean, I just was.
Yeah.
Like at that point, I could bench press 405 for reps.
Yeah.
The next day, I couldn't do 135 pounds. This motion to me was gone, but I still had my overhead for years.
Interesting.
And,
okay.
I don't know if Leiden got into this, but you know, I worked that way for up until 2021. I worked that way 10 years with that shoulder.
Just left it.
I didn't want it. I didn't want to report it to work comp. And at the time, it's one of those deals where I didn't want to, when you go off injured, you're no longer in the ambulance rotation. And so those guys that you're riding with have to ride that much more, and they're getting killed. Right?
Yeah. They've got to cover for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'd heard all these horror stories about work comp, this, that, and the other. And that really wasn't the motivating factor for me at that time. I'm not going to lie to you. It was, I didn't want to put anybody else out.
Right.
So I worked with that shoulder like that way for forever.
Well, but if you go out, you feel like you're letting your team down.
Yep.
Like the guys you live with and you trust and they trust you, you're letting them down.
Yeah.
That's almost harder than being hurt.
Yeah.
Physically.
And then you remember that you've been up in Oklahoma and Texas back and forth kind of, but you remember 2021, it was Valentine's Day. That's when we had that really big freeze that came through where it was below 0 degrees, never got over like 10, 12 degrees for like 4 or 5 days straight or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So when that first hit, the first night it got to 0 degrees, we were working. And that night we had fires, we had busted pipes everywhere. We had to bust out a lot of sheetrock. And it was very cold. And that night, I call that the night my shoulder died. We got through with that. I busted out a lot of sheetrock. We did a lot of overhaul, which is what we do when we go in and we try to find the hidden fire structures behind walls and ceilings, whatever. Or in this case, it was a lot of water leaks too. Well, I got off that shift and I couldn't even raise it was gone. Like I had all this motion.
Yeah.
But this way, the forward motion was gone, had been gone for years. But overhead was completely gone, and I couldn't even hardly move. I mean, it was so painful to me at that point.
Yeah.
And then, so at that point, I chose all my private insurance, but that's just because I didn't want to go through the work comp system. And on the injury that I had with my leg, I was forced to because it happened on the fire scene. I mean, I was transported in an emergency ambulance. There was full documentation that this happened at work.
Yeah, I mean,
there was no getting around.
There's no getting around.
Nope.
Yeah, you're just stuck.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you would have done the same thing with your shoulder, I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
And I mean, was there wear and tear on my shoulder just from life and the job and lifting heavy weights? Yeah.
Right.
There was. But the primary, like the main factors it was those fires.
Yeah.
It was that shiplap ceiling the first time and that cold weather, the 0 degree temperatures and tearing all that stuff out when those cold temps hit.
Yeah. Asking your body to move that fast, that hard, in that kind of temperature. Like, it's difficult. Like,
it was difficult.
Yeah. That's horrible. So you're okay. We've gotten through that, and then you got your surgery done on your going back to the leg.
Yeah.
And then you got your surgery done, and then life after surgery. That's where things start getting interesting. It's like the last year of your life, really.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Like, what's that look like? Like, what are you doing? What's happening? What I'm trying to get
over
to
that year, what?
Yeah.
What was the progression of it?
Through that year, like,
Yeah.
yeah. What's going on?
So, so I had the DVT, and I went to the, so I go to the ER, and I told them, and here was the other thing on that. I was afraid to go to the ER for my DVT for the blood clot without getting the because it's happened on a Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon.
Okay.
And I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And I was afraid I was going to go to the ER. And if it was, I was pretty sure I had it. But if I didn't, I thought I was going to have to cover it on my own and I was going to get denied that coverage.
Yeah.
So that was in my mind. But finally I was like, no, I've got a blood clot. I know I do. And so I'll go into the ER and I told them, I said, hey, I got a blood clot in my thigh. I can feel it. And of course, they look at you like,
yeah, right.
All right, dude. Yeah. All right, come back here. And then, of course, as soon as they put the sonar on there, they're like, you got a blood clot. I was like, yeah, man.
Yeah.
You know. So they gave me a shot in the stomach. They gave me a prescription for blood thinners. And they said, follow up with a hematologist, a vascular surgeon, and a pulmonologist. That was it. It was just those two at that point. Follow up with your, follow up. Bye. You'll be fine. And when I went in there, I had told them, I said, hey, something ain't right. As far as, I said, when I get up to go to the bathroom, even from the bed or the recliner to my bathroom, I said, I am just like so tired and just pouring down sweat.
Yeah.
Which was very unlike me.
Yeah.
Very unlike me.
Right.
And they didn't think nothing about it. Anyways, so that was on a Friday evening. Fast forward 2 days. And that's Sunday, which would have been October the 1st. 2023. October 21st, 2023, I wake up and I was like, man, I felt like just twinges in here on both sides of my chest.
Ooh.
And I was sweating. I was diaphoretic. In fact, my wife. So we had watched some Netflix series about a guy who had gotten hurt at work, was prescribed pain pills. And it was just a horror story about his addiction to pain pills and everything he put his family through. And he had gotten hurt at work, and the progression of it was like his wife was starting to notice like he didn't look right because he was taking these pain pills, whatever. Right. And they had prescribed me pain pills post-surgery, and I took them for 2 or 3 days, but then I didn't take them. My wife actually pulled me aside on that Saturday before, and she was like, are you taking these pain pills more than what you're saying? And I was like, I haven't taken those pain pills for days. Yeah. Because she's just seeing my color's not good. I'm sweating. I'm diaphoretic.
You're changing.
Yeah. So once again, I finally was like, man, I was having trouble breathing. I was like, something ain't right. Yeah. So I went down to the different big ER in Fort Worth, downtown Fort Worth, and I walk in and I said, hey, I got diagnosed with DVT 2 days ago. I said, I'm pretty sure I've got pulmonary embolisms now. And once again, they were like, okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right, dude, whatever. Yeah. So they get me to the back and they were like, you've got saddle peas. You got peas in 3 of your 5 lobes. And I was like, yeah, I told you. I mean,
something's wrong.
Yeah. So that all happens. I was in the hospital for 5 days. That was a little scary.
Oh, yeah.
It's scary, man. It was very sobering. It kind of just makes you kind of put things into perspective, Right. Because it's like, man, that could have got me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be the end of it.
So fast forward, I get out of the hospital. That was, I don't know, it was towards the end of that week. So that Thursday or Friday, I can't remember. And they released me with the paperwork. And it said follow up with Care Now, which is who our primary doctor is. It's Care Now, doc in a box. Right. It said you need to go to a hematologist, you need to go to a pulmonologist and a vascular surgeon, and you need to have this blood work done. That's what my hospital release paperwork said, right? So I was trying to be proactive.
Yeah.
The day after I got out of the hospital, and I mean, I was having a hard time breathing at this point. I mean, I was not doing well.
Right.
I go to Care Now, and I said, "Hey, I need to get this blood work done, and I need these hook me up with a hematologist and all these specialists, a pulmonologist." They didn't get those two things done, but they tried to send me back to work that day.
Back to work?
Back to work that day. To light duty.
Yeah. But still.
Dude, I barely made my way up to the Care Now.
Yeah.
They tried to send me back to work that day. And I remember sitting there arguing with the guy. I said, "Look, my ortho," I said, "I don't even have another ortho appointment for 2 more weeks for my follow-up. And he's left me off till then. Can you at least give me that leeway?" "Nope, you got to go back to work." So anyways, long story short, I went back to my ortho. He got me off that day. But it was dealing with them.
Yeah.
They couldn't find me a hematologist that was in the workers' comp network. The only reason I got a hematologist, and this was a lot further down the road, because I was just like, I'm at home, like, y'all haven't got me a pulmonologist. You haven't got me a hematologist. Like, what's going on here? And you're just stuck in limbo.
Yeah.
And of course, at that point, I was assigned a case manager who was supposed to help me with all this, and she's been very helpful. I don't want to say her name, but
that's fine.
She's been very helpful, and I never want to say anything bad about her.
She's trying to do her job.
She's trying to do her job in a very bad system.
Right.
She can't find me a hematologist. The only reason I got a hematologist is because one of my best friends since 3rd grade, his wife has worked for one of the most preeminent hematologists in Fort Worth.
Okay.
For, I don't know, 25 years, 20 years, a long time. And this hematologist, she heard about my case, and it's only the 2nd case that she's ever taken that was workers' comp in her career. And she's been in practice like 50 years.
Yeah.
But by the time I got to her, the damage had been done.
Right.
It was all that. It was them not getting me to the right people. I would go to Care Now, and you got to go to these follow-ups all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come back in a week, and it's going to be a whole lot more than nothing.
Yeah.
And every time I would go to Care Now, I would see a different nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, or physician or doctor.
Yeah.
At this Care Now clinic, and they would be looking at me. They were like, "Why are you coming to us for this?" Like, they're actually telling me this over and over again. It's like, dude, you're having some serious complications here. Why are you coming to us?
Yeah.
And I said, "Man, I have to."
Yeah.
And their network wasn't able to find me the right people on time.
So, I mean, you're being guided to keep going back to Care Now.
Yep.
From workers' comp.
Yeah, that's who our primary care doctor is for the city of Dallas.
Yeah.
That's who you go to no matter what.
No matter what. So keep sending you back.
Keep sending me back. So that was very frustrating. And at that point, I had never taken a pill for anything. I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't have any health problems.
Right.
None. And, of course, I was on the blood thinners at that point, but as soon as I went into the ER the first time for the DVT, from that day till today, my blood pressure has been up. Like, bad.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't get my blood pressure under control. And they tried a couple medications. It wasn't really seeming to touch it. And they didn't want to. I could tell my hematologist didn't want to, but she said, "Well, let's try this beta blocker." And I didn't. I was like, "All right, let's try the beta blocker."
Yeah, something.
But what that does is it lowers your heart rate. And it lowered my heart rate too much. Yeah. Now, I was on it for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, something like that. But after 2 or 3 months, I woke up one morning and it was just like my vision. It was tunnel vision. Like, I had no peripheral.
Yeah.
And when I talked, it was like, you know,
you're just,
I was like, something ain't right.
Yeah.
And I took my blood pressure and it was like, I don't know, 80/40 or something like that. And on the blood pressure thing, it said my heart rate was 38. And I'm just like, what the heck? Well, normal heart rate's anywhere from like 60 to 100. 60 if you're more on the healthy side, you know, you got a really good heart.
Yeah.
So I go to Care Now, and they were like, your heart rate is 32.
Yeah.
So, and I say all that to say this. At that point, they took me off the beta blockers cold turkey because they had to.
Right.
And when you're on beta blockers, what it does is it blocks a lot of your epinephrine and norepinephrine production.
Okay.
So when they're supposed to wean off of that.
Yeah, not just quit.
When you just quit cold turkey, that epinephrine and norepinephrine starts firing off. And there was just a lot of depression over that time.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I had gone back and forth. I remember when it first happened, I was like, I was just thinking worst case scenario. When I first broke my leg, I was like, I ain't going to be able to go back to the field.
Yeah.
You know? And then, of course, the surgery happens, and you're like, oh, man.
Yeah.
I'm good to go.
You're in good shape. Yeah.
And then the DVT and the P's happened. I was like, I could be able to go back to the field.
Yeah. Back down the roller coaster.
And then, you know, you start making some progress. You're like, oh, here we go. And then your hematologist tells you. So the first day I see my hematologist, I know I'm jumping a lot around here, but
no, that should be fine.
The first day I see my hematologist, I finally get in there. And I will never forget this day. She brings me in, and she's a tough old lady, man. She's very blunt. Like, I really like her.
Yeah.
Like, I wish we could bring her here.
She's just going to give you the deal.
Oh, she's awesome. Anyways, she brings me in, and it's there off 8th Avenue in Fort Worth, and it overlooks All Saints Hospital, the medical building she's in. We're up there like on like the 3rd floor, I think. And it's got those big picture windows on the side, you know, like this, and just all window.
Right.
And she walks in, and she like folds her arms, and she looks out the window, and she goes, she took the side of what she wanted to tell me. And she said, are you mentally prepared to not go back to doing what you were doing? Like, that was the first words out of her mouth.
Yeah.
And then of course at that point it was just like, poof.
Yeah.
And I could tell this lady ain't messing around. I could tell this doctor ain't messing around. It's like, she's like, giving me the skinny, like,
right.
Look, dude, this is
serious.
This is chronic here. This ain't going nowhere. Of course, then she goes into the story of, or really explains everything to me, that she's been doing this forever. What she's seeing with my particular case, it's non-operable. An operation's not going to help me. Of course, I didn't believe that for a while. I tried to go to vascular surgeons, and they told me the same thing.
Looking for hope.
Yeah, and the vascular surgeons did also told me. So workers' comp got me to a vascular surgeon 1 week shy of 5 months, and the first one I went to, they didn't really tell me a lot. They were just silent, and that's another thing I learned in all this. If your doctors aren't telling you anything, it ain't good.
Yeah.
And it took that hematologist to rip the Band-Aid off. Right. I was like, oh my gosh, my suspicions were correct.
Right.
But I get to the second one, and which was not much longer after I went to the first vascular surgeon. And he was like, hey, Bubba, he's like, if you'd have come to me in the first 2 to 3 months, you and I'd have been having a different conversation, because I could have gotten in there and cleared most, if not all, that out of your leg. He said, we're coming up on 5 months here. And he goes, that is permanent. So the way he explained it to me is like this. He said, in that vein, when you got that blood clot, he goes, at first, it's like a Jell-O. Go in there and get it out real easy.
Okay. Pliable.
Exactly. Pliable. That's the exact word he used. He said, but over time, he goes, even in the first 2 or 3 months, it starts to become kind of like a putty. He said, I can still go in there and get most of, not all of that out there. He said, but what's in there now is calcification. It's like, you have a bad heart. You hear people say they have a calcified heart and calcification in there, and that's what breaks off and causes them to have heart attacks.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's all in my leg now, from the base of my heel all the way up into my groin. And he said, there's nothing I can do. He said, we can put a filter up at the top. He said, but in your particular case, He goes, the deal is this. So it's in my femoral vein is the up top, and that's the biggest vein in your body. He said, let's say your pipe was this big.
Okay.
He said, you got about that much daylight now. And that's what's perfusing your leg. He said, if I go in there and put that filter in there, he goes, honestly, he said, the risk, he goes, and also with your clotting disorders, he said, the risk is you're going to have little, if any, reward. He said, the one thing that I can tell you is you're probably not going to get PEs, but I'm going to be prone to PEs now for the rest of my life from those calcifications breaking off and going up into my lungs.
Moving up.
Now, it won't be the blood clots that were going up like the blood was going up and clotting. It'll be those pieces of calcification that go up in the lungs and get stuck and block off the blood supply. So a little different, but so I'm vulnerable for that for the rest of my life.
Boy. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I just, if I could have gotten that surgery the next day, it'd just helped me out a lot better the day after.
Your chances, you had a fighting chance at least at that point.
And that's why we started this thing. And if we can make a difference and first responders don't have to go through this, because it's not like I'm an isolated story here.
Yeah, there's multiples out there.
And if something like this happens to a firefighter today, it's going to be the same type scenario.
Yeah.
Now, are they going to have factor V Leiden and they're going to have both variants of MTHFR? Probably not. I'm like 0.8% of the population or something like that,
Yeah.
But no, everything else that comes along with it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even with those other things, the fact of the matter still remains, like, delay in treatment makes exponentially worse in any regard. Like, no matter who it is, what's going on, it makes things worse.
I mean, I think we've had 3 or 4 other members that have had blood clots in the last 18 months, 2 years.
Yeah.
Because of sitting around, and they didn't have factor V Leiden, and they didn't have both variants of MTHFR.
Right.
Now, the blood thinners helped them out.
The blood thinner for you wouldn't really.
No, it wasn't going to touch it. I had to get to the vascular surgeon quick, or it was.
Yeah, that was it.
It was a done deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where you're at now. So that's you said that was 5 months in. At that point, what we're talking about, and then you kept going past that. Like, just keep bringing us up to date to where.
Yeah. So I was saying all that about so that had all been happening, and I was just. Mentally, I'm going back and forth, and then they take me off those beta blockers, and it was just like, at that point, that's when I really started to have for the first time in my life, just some, I don't know if mental health problems. Yeah, mental health problems.
Mental health
problems. I would go through, and it would go back and forth because I've always been an emotional person, right?
Yeah.
Always been lively, just happy, go lucky. I could get mad. Yeah. That's just how I am.
Right. Yeah. It's your personality.
And my personality.
Yeah.
I can be a little much. But I had never had what was happening then was, I'll be honest with you. I'd just be driving down the road and all of a sudden, I just start bawling.
Yeah.
And I'd never done that, ever. And then that would turn to fits of rage. And it was just hard to control. And because I was like, I'm never going to be able to do what I did again. What am I going to do? And there's never been why me in any of this. Yeah. I don't know. I think some people, why me,
Right.
But I was mad at the system. I was disillusioned by my circumstances. I was just mentally going through it. And so at that point, and I'll be honest about this. I had, for the first time, I reached out to a guy who's on our peer support team for our department.
Right.
His name's Casey Ellsworth. Hopefully we'll get him on here soon.
Yeah.
And Casey had been calling me like once every week or two. Hey, man, how you doing?
Yeah, checking in on you.
Go screw yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally, I was like, hey, man, I think I need to talk to somebody. Right.
Yeah.
And so I got in contact with this counselor, this group, and they're specifically tailored towards first responders. And all that anger and all that sadness, I was just able to let it out. And so all this emotion that I have, because I've always been emotional, just through talking things out, at that point, I just made up my mind, hey, I need to channel this and use it for good. And so that's when I started starting to go, all right, let's do something to fix this. This doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Put some positivity on.
Yeah, we can take this. We can take these lemons and make some pretty dang good lemonade.
Yeah.
And so, man, I just set out, and it all started with this. This is how this all came to be. Right here. I'm about to tell you how this all came to be, and you may not even know this.
Probably don't.
Yeah. So, my brother, his name David. He's 2 years younger than me. We've always been tight. He's one of the people in my life that I can talk to about anything. Right. My brother, unbeknownst to me, had started writing to members of Congress in Texas. Hey, this is what happened to my brother, and I think this is what's happening to a lot of people. I'd like to talk to you about it or whatever. We got to get something going on this, something to that effect. And he had emailed and mailed, and I believe called, and don't hold me to all those. He had made multiple attempts to contact this one particular senator, and nothing. And then Memorial Day weekend, this last year, the senator put something on his Facebook page, and it was like military and first responder or whatever.
Yeah.
And my brother just railed off on him. Like, I've been trying to contact you for weeks about first responders. You're putting this on, called him out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then underneath that, I did the same thing. Well, at that point, they contacted us the following weekend. And then we're like, hey, what's going on here? Basically, right?
Yeah.
So, and they were very open to meeting with us. And at that point, I fired off on Facebook to all Dallas members, retired and active. I said, hey, I've got a meeting with a senator. I need your stories. Because at this point, I'm trying to quantify this thing, and this thing's happening real fast.
Right. Yeah.
I'm contacting Leiden, and that's how Leiden got involved in this. I was like, hey, I need you to come with me to talk to this senator. And then we had both had a lieutenant. I talked to that first day I got burnt. That lieutenant I had, he broke his neck at the station and was denied. And it's just a god-awful story what happened to him. Far worse than, like I said, I feel blessed to be in the condition I am now.
Right.
Honestly.
Right.
I mean that in my heart of hearts.
Yeah.
So I got in contact with Leiden, and I remember we were driving down there to Austin to talk to this senator, his chief of staff, and all his staff members, right? And that's when Leiden shared with me. He was like, man, thanks for doing this. Right.
Yeah.
He was like, I don't know where this is going to lead to. He goes, but I've been down in dispatch in that dungeon for years now. And it's just like I was alone, and now I'm not anymore. And so that's how this all got started, was me firing off on Facebook. But then, all those feelings of anger and the sadness, they've started to melt away from me a lot.
Yeah.
And just trying to put forth all of our efforts towards getting this word out to the public, And I don't know what this is going to do. They're going to be like, man, this guy's.
Yeah, no, I think that you got so much purpose.
Yeah.
Right. When you go through injury that is debilitating, your purpose disappears. Like what's what it feels like. And I've been injured a couple of times, nothing work related, but just my own stupidity. Had gotten injured, and man, like what you go through. So when you lose that purpose, all of us, anybody, any human, when you have no purpose, you're not happy. You don't have anything to push for, anything to strive for. So what's being created and like what your push was, spin these negatives and the positives, and find a purpose, find meaning, and how in the world do we change the process for other people? And man, that's exciting. Like exciting to do. It's exciting to think about it. It's exciting to be a part of. Like, you know what I mean? So you add this purpose to your life when you're in a bad spot, and this is what comes up. And here you are pushing the envelope.
And it started with that, with like my on-duty thing. But then, of course, when you put yourself out there, all of a sudden people start coming to you with all their different stories. And then so it's just a realization to me, like all these different aspects that this is affecting people in. Like the mental health side of things, like the cancer, like our cardiovascular systems that get just the havoc is brought on our cardiovascular systems from being up 24 hours a time.
Right.
The back injuries, the neuro injuries, the people that had COVID, that they got it because they're out like in the height of COVID. I mean, it was I know there's a lot of different opinions on COVID.
Right.
Right. But I also know that almost everybody knows somebody who was affected or died or something like that heavily by COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like real deal.
Absolutely.
And we had multiple members of ours that caught COVID during those bad first waves, and they're still debilitated to this day, and they're being denied. So there was all these different stories, and there's all these different aspects that involve workers' comp where people were coming to me and saying, hey, this is what happened to me. And I was just like, my gosh, this is gigantic, Yeah. So it's a long, tough road to hoe.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot there. There's a lot of different moving pieces. There's like bringing awareness to it is the main.
I think so. And I think it's awareness. And I think the main thing is this: we have never come together, all of us. And what I mean by that is this: like we've just tried to fight this up here in Dallas. They've just tried to fight this in Houston. They've just tried to fight this in San Antonio.
Yeah.
They've just tried to fight this by themselves in El Paso. We haven't all come together as a collective and presented this to the public for awareness so we can get some outcry, so we can get some actual meaningful change.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm wanting for our nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I think this Forgotten Firefighter show is a great way to have these people come in from across the state. And we use this as the medium that brings us all together. And we say, hey, let's not be cowboys on this and try to go at this by ourselves. Let's try to use this as a collective group effort and actually get some meaningful change passed. So that's definitely where I'm at.
Well, there's power in numbers.
100%.
Trying to fight it by yourself, or like you said, different cities trying to do their own thing. Like,
yeah,
how do you've got to have enough support. You got to have enough people. And like, we're not senators. We're not political people.
No.
So gathering the help to make change and actually push legislation to do something about it. It's a numbers game.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's some people that have done some very good work over the years, but it's all piecemeal. And I'm not saying piecemeal is not important. Like I'm saying, a little chunk of legislation here, a little chunk of legislation there, and over time it gets better and better and better and better. But we can do that, but it still has to be enforced.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even the stuff that we have had passed isn't being enforced.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, is just the bananas part of it. But and a lot of that, what I'm talking about there, not being enforced, that's what ultimately needs to be brought to the light.
Yeah. I mean, who enforces it? You know what I mean? Does
Well, I mean, I don't want to.
We don't want to go too far.
Yeah, I don't want to go too deep in that. I definitely have that answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to get all the facts straight.
Yeah.
Before I start making those proclamations.
Right.
I'm 99% sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But I want it actual and factual, and we'll bring that to the light.
That's a future deal to talk about.
100%, and it involves a lot.
Yeah. We're going to need more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, man, anything else you want to add? Like,
I think one thing I do want to say is for anybody listening to this, where you're going, like your department's going through these issues of the work comp, you're disillusioned about it, you feel like you've gotten nowhere fast, just reach out to us.
Yeah.
In the show notes and on our website should be a way to contact us. And please reach out. And if you want to come on here and tell your story, that's what we want here. That's what this platform is here for. I know there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of stories out there. So just please get in contact with us.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to give you a platform to come speak on.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said any better myself. Man, it's episode 3 with Stephen Hargrove.
Episode 3.
Man, thank you so much for coming on and what you're trying to do, and the time and effort and money. And man, we're so grateful for everything going on.
Yep.
So, all right, that's it. Next week.
All right.
Yo.
All right. Bye.
We're out. See you.